Hello, everybody. Greetings, all you amazing people. Welcome to CHEZUBA Talks, a podcast dedicated to sharing compelling stories of hope, determination, and humanity. Thank you for joining me on this discovery of the human spirit and the joy of shared happiness. I'm Tej, your host, and with me today is the positivity-infused Binka Le Breton, the international face of Iracambi. Welcome, Binka.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you all, Tej.
Wonderful. I read some amazing numbers on your website. We'll come to that in a minute. Tell us the meaning of the beautiful sounding name, Iracambi.
Aha! Iracambi is in the Tupi language, and it means the land of milk and honey, which is a wonderful name, right?
Beautiful. Yeah, that's an enticing name indeed. So what was the situation like when Iracambi started off? Is there some reason why it started off?
Well, Iracambi is two things. It is a non-profit, but before it was a non-profit, before it even thought of becoming a non-profit, it was destined to be a sustainable forest farm in Brazil. And the reason it started, Tej, was something that I'm sure will resonate with everybody. It's called a midlife crisis, otherwise known possibly as a gap year or whatever. And the good thing about those is that you can have as many as you like. And they're usually huge opportunities for change. And I would categorize the COVID experience as a collective midlife crisis.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, that's a different way of thinking about it. Yeah, true, yeah. The land of milk and honey, is it? And so what is the milk and what is the honey there?
Okay, the milk. Well, this refers to the idea of having a sustainable forest farm, right? And the two main products were milk and honey, right? Now that transitioned over time into more of an emphasis on the forest, right? And on protecting the forest and restoring the forest. And we realized that you really couldn't manage a farm if you couldn't look after the environment. So after a few years of setting up a sustainable forest farm, we decided to take the plunge and set up a non-profit. And Tej, we had no idea what we were doing. And this was in 2000. And if you can remember, the access to the internet wasn't nearly so good then. So we had to go onto internet at night, and at night because we got it through the telephone, right? And at night, the calls were cheap. So we would sit up and wait till 10 o'clock, and then we'd run to the computer and we'd go into Google and say, hey, how do we set up a non-profit? And that was how it started 22 years ago now.
Wow, that's so exciting. The joy of starting it from scratch, I'm sure that is very fulfilling.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And when you start, Tej, you have no idea what you're going to do because everything needs to be done, right? And we were in and are in a relatively remote rural area. The infrastructure was poor. The forest was, in danger. And so you start off by running around like crazy, trying to solve all these problems at once, which you actually can't do. And then over time, you kind of, you drill down and figure out what you can do well, what you can do now, who you can do it with. And what is a wonderful thing to do, but it's not your job. That's perhaps the most difficult one.
Yeah, I know, especially when you're a hands-on person, you want to do everything, you want to make sure that everything is going right. So you need to have the right people to work with.
Yes.
So how many people are you how many people work with you right now? What is your staff count? What is your volunteer count?
Okay, the staff count at the moment is about 16. So we've grown enormously, and that's really thanks to COVID, because the COVID experience, brought us like everybody up against a brick wall, and we had to decide if we were going to sink or swim. And we decided we were going to just put out a big dream and go for it. And the big dream was to plant 1 million trees. So that's our big dream. So there are 16 of us staff members, and we work with the local community in planting trees and a lot of other things as well.
Right, I know. I read about your research projects and your internships also. So could you just tell us more about it? So what is it? I mean, people would come to your organization to do some kind of research in the forest, and you help them out with, the resources and, knowledge.
Yes. Tej, we've always been volunteer powered because I think if you have a dream, that attracts people, right? So we've always, for the last 20 years, it started with, our own children and their university friends, and people would be excited about the idea of the rainforest, and they would come and they would bring us their skills. And then you learn that actually volunteers need to be well managed and well handled because some of them are a lot of work. But our volunteers have been wonderful, and we always, we didn't make it so easy that we will collect you by taxi from the airport, which is actually 5 hours away. We said, this is, if you want to come, this is the deal. Bring your boots, bring a sense of humor, and let's save the world together. So I think that probably weeded out the ones who weren't so keen and didn't have the boots or the sense of humor.
I think you weed out
sorry, how do we weed them out? Yeah, sorry. They sort of self-selected, but during COVID, of course, we couldn't accept any foreign students. So from an average of about, say, 8 every month, 8 internationals, and then a varying number of Brazilian students, we suddenly abruptly went down to 0. And we're just beginning to ramp up again. What we did do during COVID is explored a whole new world of volunteering. That was online volunteering. And that was great. And a lot of people, who would love to come in person, but, can't for whatever reason, perfectly good reasons like husbands and children or whatever, or careers, pitched in to help us. And we discovered, all kinds of new friends and contacts clear across the world who brought us all kinds of skills. And then we had to learn how to manage remote volunteers. So that was a different skill set for us too, right? But that's been hugely successful. So now we're sort of hybrid. We are partly, remote, and increasing numbers of people are coming back. But because, there were difficulties connected with COVID of getting into the country and so on, there's still a bit of a hangover that foreign students normally come during their summers, which is now for us. And many of them were not able to get permission or funding from the universities to come this year. But we're sort of slowly building up again, which is very exciting.
Yeah, wonderful. So I had a Brazilian friend who came over, I think this was before COVID, and she was talking about how Brazil is, urbanizing so fast and so soon that the right measures to have a sustainable development goal is not really being followed. So that was 3 years ago. So would you say the same situation exists right now?
There's always this tension in every country, I think, between the idea of the environment and the economy, as if they were separable, as if you can't save the environment, without tanking the economy, which is completely the wrong way to look at it. But this is still very much the case. However, the good news is that Brazil is very interconnected. Lots of people because we live in remote areas on dirt roads, and it's sometimes physically difficult to get together. We're very accustomed to, making friends on Zoom calls and discussions like this. And there's a pretty strong civil society that is really concerned about preserving the extraordinary resources that Brazil has. So on the one hand, the government will say one thing and go in one direction, but the people sometimes will go in another direction. So you hear terrible things about Brazil. you don't, of course, hear the stories of people on the ground getting stuff done, right?
So that's true. That's true. The negative news gets in first.
Sure.
So, are you also into habitat loss, or how many species are you impacting currently? Have you put a count, or is it just a generalized way of saying that you are doing so and so and so many things for the forest?
Got you. Our main focus for the forest is restoring and protecting it. And Tej, our focus, well, there are several focuses, but the program arose in 2016, and for our restoration program, which is called Forests for Water. And we're in a mountain range, and it's a very important watershed. And Brazil is a huge country stuffed with natural resources, and people didn't really pay much attention. I was raised in Europe, which is, in a small country where you had to look after your resources because they weren't endless, right? And because this is a big watershed, people would be very profligate in their use of water. And from about 2016, the effects of climate change started to kick in big time. And some of the local smallholder farmers discovered that their springs of water were drying up. So that's disaster, right? And they knew that we'd been talking about planting trees and had been planting trees for a long time, but they thought, it was a pretty crazy thing to do. So they couldn't think of an alternative. So we started to work with the farmers who had deforested areas on the steep mountain slopes, which led to erosion and all kinds of problems, and eventually the springs drying up. And they discovered, and we all discovered, which we knew, that if you plant in the water catchment areas, then the rain, when it runs off the mountain, is not going to take the mountain away with it, right? So last week, Tej, I was with one of our neighbors called Adam. And Adam was a very typical local farmer. He has, say a 10-hectare farm, 6 children, 15 grandchildren, and never quite could make ends meet. What he would do would be his cash crop is coffee. And he would just nibble away at the edge of the forest in order to expand the coffee field, in order to be able to buy flip-flops so the kids and the grandkids could go to school, right? It's against the law, but what can you do? And he was the very first person. He came to us and he said, you guys are always talking about planting trees, and I can't see the sense in it. But anyway, I'm at my wit's end, so why don't you plant some of your silly old trees? So we did. And his spring, which had dried up, came back. This was 2016. And we were with him last week, and he said, I've never seen the spring so good. It's absolutely phenomenal. And he said, we have a lovely little film on our YouTube site called Coffee with Adam. His name is Adam. And at the end of that, he says, guys, you guys were right. He said, that guy, Robin is my husband, the co-founder. That guy, Robin's got a really good head on his shoulders. A great testimony.
Yeah, lovely. So I think these success stories go on to inspire others as well. And I think everybody is in on the same page because they know what development and what planting trees can do for their farms.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
And what we're doing, Tej, is we're not only restoring the water resources, which are huge, of course, is very important. And people are beginning to understand now here. But of course, we're increasing habitat. And, and with, as you plant the trees, they anchor the soil so that you get less erosion. So there's a whole bunch of good things that happen and improves the local economy as well. And rural societies tend to be quite conservative. You have to show them that things get better if you make a change, and if possible, bring some kind of financial benefit to them. But that is happening, so that the whole area is beginning to change from the old kind of unsustainable ways of land management, which is what everybody had always done, right? So people are starting to, think of in terms of organic products and reforestry, and setting up forest nurseries on their little farms so that they can have their own supply of seedlings. And, there's a virtuous circle which is beginning to take place, which is very exciting.
I'm sure it is exciting because this is not something that you can see overnight. It takes some time to, fructify. So
Yes.
building that trust must have been quite a journey for you.
Yes, one of the first things we realized was that however many million trees or 1,000 trees we wanted to plant, we'd never have enough hands. So we needed to enlist everybody, particularly the kids, right?
Yes.
So we started an education program in the local schools, and bringing the kids out of the school into the forest and introducing them to rainforest science. And, who isn't going to fall in love with a rainforest? I mean, it's such a wonderful thing, but most of them had never actually had that experience before. So now we've raised a whole generation of school kids, some of whom are now going to college, some of whom are actually working with us now, who had their first introduction to rainforest science at Iracambi. So that's an absolutely crucial balance to planting trees and planting ideas, right?
Absolutely. The young generation is where the ideas come from and where the future holds. When you talk about this collaboration with the rainforest, there must be some indigenous knowledge as well, right? From some ancient beliefs or some kind of conservation efforts that were there previously in place. And because of perhaps rising populations, it has just kind of overruled all of that. The generations might have not followed what their ancient grandparents and older elders have said. So
Exactly.
are you incorporating indigenous knowledge with indigenous species and, of course, modern technology?
The most fun way that we've discovered to do that, Ted, is through working with native medicinal plants, right? Which have been traditionally used for generations. Granny used to produce teas and poultices and so on.
Yes.
And it's a pretty macho society here. So one of the things we wanted to do was to really help work with the women and get them to be able to cooperate and realize, the knowledge that they had and the power that they had. So we wanted to get them involved in sort of public policy spaces as well, which are pretty exclusively male dominated. But we discovered that if we mention the word politics, everybody screams and runs. So if we talk about, what did grandmother tell you and what do you know and what do you use? So we've started research. We're part of a Brazilian-wide network that is cataloging all the medicinal plants, which are, thousands of species, right?
Right.
And making, we started doing online workshops, of course, during COVID, but now we're doing in-person workshops. So we go to the local communities, say, hey, girls, this is going to be really fun. We're going to have a girls' day and let's just trade knowledge. And, let's see if we can make, something fun like soap or shampoo or something. And by, changing, sort of swapping news and views, they're getting more and more excited. And then we can see this as a way of really empowering the local women. They love it and we love it. And we would like that to become an alternative income source for them as well, so that they might be able to create cooperatives and things in the future. It's been going in person only in the last year or so because of COVID. But that's one of the most fun and exciting things we do. And we're learning new stuff all the time.
Super. Yeah. So you do have a local community market where you are, you put up your produce for sale. Do you have produce like that, or is it still to start?
It's still a work in progress. And there are organic markets in the local towns. Our actual immediate communities are too small to support a market, But the local workers, agricultural workers union, and various other social movements have organized a not quite organic, but on the way to being organic produce market in a town which is about 50 kilometers away, and that's once a week. So that's the first opportunity for us. And at this stage, the most exciting thing is the feedback from the women who say, This is so interesting. Why don't we make this? Why don't we make that? I remember my grandmother said this, And, we are still at the stage where everything is kind of bubbling up, and we're trying to see where it's going to go. And we're not quite sure.
Lovely. And looking at your enthusiasm, I'm sure this thing is going to go amazing heights, going to go to amazing heights. So, Binka, tell me, because a lot of companies now are looking at sustainable developmental goals as part of their CSR or other avenues, do you have any partnerships as such, or do you have any corporates who are supporting you or partnering you?
Yes, we do, Tej, and that was another COVID realization, that we can't spend the rest of our lives with the kind of traditional nonprofit financing model, spending a long time writing a project proposal for $5,000 here and $10,000 there. So about 18 months ago, one of our corporate volunteer teams worked with us to create a corporate brochure. So we started really thinking about what can we do towards, for example, carbon certification, right? Helping companies, with ESG and so on. Well, we had one group that helped us really drill down to how many trees we plant, how many tons of carbon this sequesters, how many dollars, how many years. Really complicated, actually, calculations. We got a group from Oxford University Business School that did a 6-week job with us, taking us right through the carbon market from, A to Z. And since then, we are just actually finishing a marketing consultancy with a big marketing firm. And tomorrow, they are going to present us with an updated corporate offer. That their brief was to help us get from good to great and produce an irresistible offer to corporate. So I'll get back to you when I see it.
Lovely. Drum roll. Lovely. I'm so happy that this is happening. And I look forward to coming and seeing you sometime, Binka, in Brazil, and volunteering perhaps. So that I'd love to do something like that. Wearing boots and walking in the soil and interacting with all those beautiful, colorful species there.
Perfect. Well, you're invited, Tej. And so is anybody who is listening. We'd love to have you.
Wonderful. And just to tell you, CHEZUBA is an online platform where we have a number of volunteers who can volunteer online, and they don't need to be there physically. So whatever help you need, I'm sure all you volunteers out there, please go on and look up Iracambi. Could you just tell us your website and Twitter handle or Facebook?
Our website is very easy. It's iracambi.com. Easy, right? And it's in Portuguese and English. And our social media, again, always the word Iracambi. If you Google Iracambi, there's tons of stuff that will come up, because I think nobody else has that name except us.
Yes, it's beautiful. It is a beautiful name. Yes, wonderful. Binka, thank you so much. It was wonderful talking to you, and so enlightening to know that people are out there doing work on the soil, on the ground, and happy doing it, right? So yes. I think that is what connects you with nature in its true sense. And I think that glow of happiness that you have on your face comes from there.
Thank you, Tej. Pleasure to talk with you.
Lovely. Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you sometime. Bye-bye.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Bye. Take care.